I forgot to hit the record button, so we'll start out. I'll go through my piece on the inline editing and just let you know kind of what's coming down the pipe here, where this is headed. I'm going to share my screen here. All right, inline editing. We've been in the process of changing out a number of things on the template controller feature that works in mail2, and this upgrade that with inline editing is basically going to allow users to create content faster, more efficiently, take more control over images and that type of thing. It's going to ultimately do away with the pop-up window that we use for editing content. Instead, it's going to place that editing function inline, and basically you can kind of see the editor working directly inline on the campaign rather than kind of flipping back and forth between the view of the campaign and the pop-up editor. And once we roll this function, what you're going to see is a button up here in the upper right. Try inline editing. Little pop-up there says the beta feature is going to enable you to edit your campaigns, yada, yada, yada. And you can actually, for the time being, be able to toggle back and forth between inline editing and kind of the traditional classic pop-up editing. So I'm going to take this campaign and actually try inline editing with it. So what's new with inline editing? Basically, it's got some really much simpler menu structure. When I hover over any of the content regions, I get a blue outline rather than the green one. And when I click on it, I get the menus that are, we've got some static going on.
Yeah, it's quite bad.
If folks haven't muted out, you go ahead and I'm going to try muting all attendees. Yeah. If folks haven't muted, go ahead and mute. Just kind of fade out for a second there.
John, do you want to try and call in instead of using the microphone and see if that helps?
Yeah, I'll see if that's on my side. Bear with me a second. All right. When you click on a editable content region, rather than obviously the WYSIWYG editor, traditional WYSIWYG editor popping up, we have the menus right in line with that particular region. There's a show and hide extra features, so if you don't need to have certain things in your view as you're working with your that section of content, you can hide those. So contextual, those are called contextual menus, really just kind of nice and in with your content. We do have a new image manager within inline editing. So when I go to give myself a little bit of space here, drop in a new image. Oops. When I want to go to image library, we are using a new type of image management software by Aviary to do this. And basically it's going to have the same folder structure that you have. It takes a second to import it over when you first get in here into the new view. But once you're in here, it's going to provide you with a number of new functions that allow you to do certain things with your images, a lot more things in terms of image editing. So for example, maybe I wanted to drop in a new image in line with this text area. maybe I want this one. Can drop in. We now have drag and drop handles for resizing directly within the inline editor. So it's a little bit more flexible, a little bit more easier to deal with making some image changes. I'm going to drop that out for now. With the image editor itself, you can do a number of things on the fly directly in the image manager. I'm working with this image here. This will flow a little bit faster. It's the first time I've worked on this particular account with this image manager, so it's taken a little bit to load up. But once it does its initial load, it'll move substantially faster. I can right-click on image and manipulate it directly in the image manager now. A little bit more, a few more bells and whistles. I can do some enhancements on it, maybe change the colors around, fix type of thing. A number of new effects in here, different, I'm going to do like a sepia, something like that. Can change a number of different effects. Put frames around things. Here's one of my favorite new ones. This is sort of an add-on that I don't know if we'll find much use for, but they're called stickers. And we can give Rocky some cool 3D glasses. Actually, how about this one? So a couple additional bells and whistles apart from basic editing, resizing, cropping, changing the orientation, that type of thing. So a little bit more control over that with the new image editing software directly within the application. Close out of that.
For those of you who want to turn a board member or your CEO into a pirate sometime. I know we've all had the urge.
You can put on the eye patch, that type of thing. The undo features are now at the block level rather than across the campaign level, which is nice. So this, any undo feature, any undo actions that I take are going to just correspond solely to that particular block level. So those are specific to that. Copying and pasting images now works pretty much just like copying and pasting text. Like let's do Control-C and Control-V, paste in an image. Rather than having to reinsert it. The block control icons that we're used to on the old WYSIWYG editor are still here. They're just now to the top, and they're kind of semi-transparent, so you can add blocks as you need to. And you don't have to toggle them on and off in order to see the, kind of see the different spacing that you have going on with your campaign. It's just a little cleaner, a little easier to use. A couple other things to point out, some notable things that we have that aren't in this particular release of this yet, this initial release. There is no control at the bottom for attachments yet, so that will be coming out in a later version of it. Also, there are no, within the latest tools in here, there aren't any conditional content buttons, RSS builders. That can still be pasted in from the other view, and you can have it in here. It's just those tools aren't available yet. And also, when you're working inline editing, there is no editing on the mobile version. It's basically going to be on the desktop version you do your editing. So those are some of the things that were omitted this go around. Those are all be coming out a little bit later on.
But that's kind of a sneak peek at what's coming down the pipe with some of the major changes that we're making with the template controller, and you know, just sort of setting the table for some new things that are coming along, just to help you make, you know, work more efficiently with your campaign. So hopefully you'll like what you see and you want to switch over to that, and you'll see more information on when that becomes available. Question from Jennifer. Can those who have customized editable templates utilize the new inline editing feature as well? We'll have to look at that. If they are built exactly on the same standards, then yes, but they may be have to use the old WYSIWYG editor on some of those.
Yeah, I would think, Jennifer, like with there may be some tweaks that you need to make to your customized template to the editable content regions themselves that are built into those if you're using the editable regions in the templates. But by and large, I believe the answer to your question is yes. Like, as long as you're following the documentation that we've provided all along for custom templates, where you use like the EC item and the EC image and all that. Like, if that's what you're doing, then I believe these will translate over so that you can use them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly Schultz asked, when are you anticipating this release? I do believe we're going to try to roll this out here within the next few days. We have a little bit more testing to do on it, but hopefully we can get at least get out this beta version of it so people can start trying it and using it. And again, you're not obligated to use it at this point. You still have the classic pop-up editor for now. Howard, no, it hasn't been rolled out to any accounts yet. Coming soon. Any other questions on the inline editor at this point? Okay, nothing more on that. Chris, I'm going to kick it over to you for your piece.
Sounds good. Over the last couple of weeks, I know there have been like a couple of transitions here and there. Some have been great and super smooth. Others have had a couple of things that you guys have needed to do on your end to help accommodate the transitioning that we've been doing. But primarily it has to do with how we handle security within mail2. So it's not that mail2 has not been secure up to this point, but we're rather making just some changes to our security roadmap so that some of the features that we're going to be implementing and actually have implemented in the last few weeks are able to be used, because some of the way that we had things set up with security certificates primarily on the different sites that support mail2 needed to be tweaked in order for us to support one particular feature around the custom screen. So if I'm logging into my dashboard here, one thing that most of you have seen with the custom screen is that custom screen is web-based in Tessitura, and there's a URL that you use to access that within the Tessitura client, and it's a fairly just anybody is ever going to happen across on the web for any particular reason. But we do have the option now for a little bit of an enhanced security configuration around the custom screen, where we use what's called client-side certificate authentication. That's a really fancy word for, really fancy set of words for, we give you something, and then when you go to load the custom screen, we ask you for that thing, and if you don't have it, then you don't get to see the custom screen. That thing is a security certificate, so you're able to generate and download that certificate directly from within your dashboard once you've authenticated. And you'll see that here's two options associated with that here. Use the first one that says Manage Custom Screen Authentication. When you click on that, it pulls up a window that allows you to generate a new certificate. Once you generate that certificate and download it, you're going to have to give that to your IP person. Like whoever manages your network is going to have to take that and then install that certificate on anybody's computer that needs to access the custom screen. They can do that through what's called a group policy, so it's a very simple thing to do. But this is for folks who want the custom screen to be completely locked down, with the exception of just having like only people who have access to Tessitura being able to view the custom screen. Some organizations have security policies that mandate that, depending on whether or not they're government-run organizations. That would be a very common version of the implementation for this, is that your theater is a government-run theater, and so they have security restrictions that say the way the custom screen loads isn't quite good enough. How is this going to work with RAMP? Jason Song, your question. Yeah, it will work with RAMP. You'll have to send this up to the RAMP team, and they'll install the certificate there for you unless you have administrative access to that environment. So when you have Tessitura loaded up, and I'm not going to go through all this right now just because this may or may not apply to your organization. Like any organization can do this, but the only ones, there's a very small handful of organizations that would actually be required to do this, and that's going to be those that are publicly run, is mostly my guess, like those that have government mandates to make sure that certain things are locked down in terms of privacy and so on. And what you can do is once you download the certificate, you actually can take that and copy and paste the certificate file into your Tessitura, like the 2x window, and then you should be able to drag and drop the certificate into the custom screen and install it in the version of Internet Explorer that's running on RAMP, because that's essentially where it needs to go. And then once that's installed, you'll be able to select the certificate there to use with the custom screen and so on. But you will need some support from the RAMP team on getting that installed, because one of the things with this feature is out of the box, Tessitura uses Internet Explorer 7 for the core of its web-based custom screen engine. So one of the reasons why the custom screen is a little bit sluggish sometimes, or some people have had some issues with some of the JavaScript stuff that goes on with it, is because Tessitura forces it to use IE7. Now, some organizations have already done this thing where you can actually tell Tessitura, hey, don't use IE7 because it's awful. Use IE9 because that's a little bit better than awful. And you can even go up to IE11 now with it, depending on what version of IIS you're running. That gets a little technical for probably a lot of the folks on this call, but the bottom line is you have to tell Tessitura to run a more recent version of Internet Explorer than Internet Explorer 7 in order for this feature to work. That, at a minimum, is what you're going to have to engage the RAMP team to get done for you. Everything else you can take care of pretty much on your own, but that one's going to have to be taken care of by the RAMP team. So. Anyway, so I don't want to really go into this feature too much, but other than just to say it protects the custom screen so that it can only be accessible by certain people in certain places who have the certificate installed. As I said earlier, most organizations, the security that we have in place on it today, because it's encrypted and you have to know a very specific URL and set of keys in that URL in order to access the custom screen, it's secure enough for 99% of organizations, but this was just kind of an added layer that we brought in because we have some newer clients coming on board that we needed to do this in order to sign the agreement with them. So this sort of set in place a chain of, sorry, there was a couple other questions about this. Will each organization need, yes, that is correct. For Pittsburgh Cultural Trust, every organization would generate their own certificate in the organization, and then all those certificates would need to be installed so that people who had access or needed access to all of them had those certificates. They expire annually, so that's part of the deal with this, is once a year you're going to have to refresh the certificates. If you use this feature, you're going to have to refresh the certificates, download new ones, and install the new ones annually. But in a consortium, every organization has their own, one for each organization's custom tab, because they're unique to your mail2 dashboard. So this set in motion a series of changes we had to make in order to get this working properly. And one of those was we had to switch the primary login domain for the application from mail2.lynch2.com to dashboard.mail2app.lynch2.com. So whenever anybody is logging in now, we got a big flood of support tickets after we did this because people were trying to get a mail2.lynch2.com and they were seeing certificate errors there. Because we no longer support a certificate, an SSL certificate for mail2.lynch2.com. We only have the certificate for the mail2 app family of domains. So we redirect you, and as part of that redirect, you were seeing a security error that said like, oh, you're being redirected from this non-secure domain to this secure domain, and there was a bunch of other stuff with that. So just the easy way around that is just set your bookmark at dashboard.mail2app.linch2.com. That's the new login domain for the application, and you'll be all set. You won't see any errors associated with that. So, and there'll be a couple other features that we roll out related to that as time goes on. So, any questions around that? Just send us a support ticket, or if you have any that you want to talk about now on the call, then feel free to put them in the chat window, and I'll move on to my next thing. So the other the other dashboard alert that you guys saw recently was related to version 12. As more organizations start ramping up onto version 12, we're releasing our general release for version 12 that fixes a couple of things with the application that need to be fixed for compatibility. One of those things is that with version 12, they introduced this fancy new thing called the quick sale. And so there's a customer number 0 that exists where all of those sales go. And that can really mess with our CAN sort of scheduled job pre-show reminder logic if we allow that customer number to be included in the jobs that we run. So we're suppressing that customer number by default from any import or any pre-show reminder job that runs because it doesn't need to be there. It's the default pre-sale or quick sale customer, and so but as the very nature of that is that it has no patron information associated with it. So there's no sense in sending a pre-show reminder to that customer. So and also those are being done at the window, so there would be no time for it anyway. So that's one of the first changes. Another change that is seemingly really small, but like I can't believe it in 3.5, 4 years it didn't bubble up until just really even the last couple of months is that when we go to select email addresses, there's an email end that is in the TE address, or sorry, in the e-address type table, where I guess you know, you can have e-address types that are actually like web URLs and stuff like that. And we have never traditionally suppressed those because in the 4 years that we've been doing this, nobody has ever said that it's caused them a problem. Somebody brought it to my attention a couple weeks ago, and I thought, you know, makes total sense to me. So we start suppressing any e-address types that don't have the email end checked on them, and it's checked by default when you create new e-address types, by the way. So that's nothing that you would have to go back and sort of retrofit. So that's another change. There are a couple of updates to, again, the scheduled jobs. Most of the changes in the procedures do focus on scheduled jobs because there were a couple of fields in the database that used to allow empty values, like we didn't have to populate them, and now with version 12, Tessitura is requiring that they be populated with certain values. So we need to start doing that, but it's all very dry stuff. No real, no great features coming along with that. It's mostly just fixing for some new aspects to the version 12 database. So I'm going to have that package. Those of you who have sent in support tickets already, I'm going to have the installation package done either by the end of the day today or tomorrow. I actually have the package built. I'm just running QA on it today, trying to install it in our environment, making sure that there's no errors when we run it, and all the permissions get set properly and so on. So either today or tomorrow, if you sent the support ticket in, then you'll be getting a response from me in the next probably 48 hours with you know, what you need to run to get that up to date. That does need to be run before you start running version 12, so that's really important. It's backward compatible to version 11. There's nothing in it that isn't compatible with version 11, so if you're on 11 now and you just want to do it to get it out of the way so that you're ready for version 12, that's perfectly fine. There's nothing that's going to prevent you from doing that. So all of the changes, none of them are breaking changes for version 11. They're all compatible, backward compatible with your existing systems. So those of you that are on version 10 and don't hide on this call because I know who you are and I know where you are, I need you to upgrade to version 11 soon, and we'll talk about that. But you should be doing it anyway for Tessitura. I'm surprised they haven't sent a henchman after you for not having it. So anyway, that's what's going on with the version 12 upgrade. There is another set of features, and this is not going to be part of the general release with version 12, so this is important to understand as well. The general release for version 12 is going to be specifically bug fixes and patches for how Tessitura version 12 operates and things we need to do with mail2 to make it compatible with that. Okay. There is another set of updates that we have that we're ready to start distributing if your organization wants to use this, that is around contact point purposes. Okay, so with version 12, they introduced this idea of contact point purposes, or CPPs as some people are calling them. And if your organization is going to start using contact point purposes, with version 12 to manage opt-ins and opt-outs and lists and so on. We can do that, and we have a set of procedures today that are actually installed with a couple of our licensees and are working today and synchronize those contact point purposes with mail2 lists. So basically, you create a new mail2 list in your mail2 dashboard, and that creates the associated contact point purpose in Tessitura. When people subscribe to that list in mail2, it checks off that contact point purpose for them in Tessitura, and so on. Likewise, if they are in Tessitura, if you have somebody who's like new to file and we need to check off certain contact point purposes for them, then it goes through and checks off the appropriate mail2 lists and so on. So there's some kind of nice in and out going on with that, and we're not putting that in the general release. The reason why we're not putting it in the general release is because switching to use contact point purposes is a much bigger conversation for your organization. Like, this isn't something that you just decide you're going to do someday and now all of a sudden you're doing it. So it's going to be, I suspect, a very slow transition for people to start using this feature of Tessitura, just because it's going to require adjustments to your website. It's going to require adjustments to how your people internally process opt-ins and opt-outs and track these kinds of things. So just know that when your organization's ready to do it, we have the procedures and the database objects to support doing it. You just need to get in touch with us so that we can install those and then do the data migration for you from our existing structure with your organization into using contact point purposes. So we're super excited about it. I think it's a great way to run mail2 with Tessitura, and it's only going to get better because we're going to be having Tessitura write some service interceptors so that when somebody calls in and they want to opt in or opt out of particular lists, you won't have to use the custom screen. You can just go to the email address, load up the contact point purposes, and actually use the Tessitura interface for point purposes to opt in or out. And as a result of doing that, it's going to communicate through the mail2 API over the internet to your mail2 dashboard and let mail2 know that somebody has opted into or out of or globally unsubscribed from certain lists. So it opens up a new direction of communication that some of you have not had to this point. Some of you, like I saw the ARCH centers on the call, they've been using the mail2 API integration for quite a while, probably a couple years, where they're actually pushing data from Tessitura out to mail2 as part of a nightly job. But and some other clients that we have are doing that same kind of thing. But what this is going to do is it's going to open that capacity up for everybody to start using from contact point purposes to push that information over to the mail2 dashboard. So if that doesn't make any sense to you, if you just totally glassed over and started doodling on a notepad, don't worry about it. There'll be more about that to come once we launch it, and we'll be talking a lot about this at the conference this year because it'll be new when we get to the conference. So, so that's something to keep in mind. The last thing that I want to tell you guys about in terms of new features, I think this is something that a lot of you are going to be really excited about. It has a little bit to do with what I was just talking about with coordinating bidirectional communication between your mail2 dashboard and Tessitura. So to this point, anytime you've had an opt-in or opt-out, our suggestion is, make mail2 the first touch. Like, have them subscribe or opt-in or opt-out through the subscription center or through the API with mail2 or through the custom screen in Tessitura or directly within the e-news newsletters that you send out. And when you do it that way, it makes sure that Tessitura gets the information and applies it there, so that that loop always flows through mail2 and then back to Tessitura. And we're really happy that we actually have a report that you're going to be able to set up and run, and this is going to be done directly within Tessitura in your reports and utilities section of Tessitura. It's a report that you'll be able to set and schedule to run on a particular cadence that you choose, like whether that's hourly or nightly. It'll be up to you to determine however often you want this to run, and it'll be responsible for synchronizing mail2 dashboard lists with lists in Tessitura on an automatic basis. So you won't have to write any custom SQL or have your database people be involved with this at all. What this is going to be really useful for are those things like membership lists, like those private membership lists where every night you could have new members that are a part of that list. And you want to make sure that those people make their way over into mail2 so that when you deploy your newsletter to all of your members, everybody who's on that member list gets it, okay? This is also good for people who have fallen off the membership list because every night there are certain people whose memberships might expire, and so it's going to take and synchronize that list over to mail2. But the bottom line is it's going to use either an extraction or a list. You can set it to run with either one of those, and you'll be able to say, hey, every night run this extraction, take the output of that extraction, and do these sets of things with it in mail2. I want you to opt them into this particular list, or if they shouldn't be opted into it, opt them out of it. stuff like that. But essentially, it's just going to run on whatever schedule you run. You'll be able to set it up, do it entirely through the Tessitura interface. It's not something that you're going to have to do, like I said, through mail2 or anything like that. And you'll be able to keep lists synchronized from Tessitura to mail2 in addition to mail2 into Tessitura. So it's a pretty exciting feature. It's something we've been thinking about and working on for quite a while in terms of the architecture of it, and we're excited about kind of how it's unfolded. I think it's going to be really helpful for a lot of organizations. So we'll send out an email when that is available. Again, probably 30 to 60 days. We'll send out an email when it's available with a link to the support article. And this will be the kind of thing where there will be an installation package for it. You'll just download that, install it, and it'll be ready for you. So there's not going to be any configuration on our part we need to do for you or any advanced configuration you need to do. Literally, it's going to be a series of scripts that you just download and run in your database with your database administrator or from the RAMP team, and you'll have it available to you. So, any questions about all of that? Okay. I guess one other thing that I know is happening here in the next day or two with scheduled campaigns, I should say, hopefully it's the next day or two, some people have asked for the ability to input a start and end date. Rebecca, I know this is something that you've asked for before, and it's finally coming about, and that is that with scheduled campaigns, you'll be able to say, hey, schedule this, or start the scheduled campaign, but only start it as of, May 9th, and then run it from May 9th through July 15th. But don't make me go in and toggle the button on and off on, July 15th or whatever, June 15th. Just stop running it. Even if it's still on, just stop running it on that date. So you'll be able to input start and end dates for schedules with the scheduled campaigns so that you don't have to remember to turn them on and turn them off. So, and that's, like I said, it's in process now, going to be tested very soon and be finished up. So, any questions about that stuff? Okay. John Boyd, over to you.
All right. Any other questions from the audience today? Watching the chat window. Anybody wants to chime in? Yeah, Gloria, you can go ahead. You can talk.
Thank you. Love all this new stuff. It's great. I have a question about when you create an email like the sample one that you had up there, and a lot of people, including ourselves, puts the first line of the email to say view in your browser, and what happens with that when you have email preview on in your client, it's previewing that text instead of, like, I don't know if it's taking it from the first line of the body, or I just wanted to know what other people are doing about that, if they're concerned about it, what you recommend. I'd rather have it say, the first line of the email, which is, Patty Griffin's coming to the Flynn, or whatever it is, rather than having it say, do you want to view this in your browser?
Yeah.
So that first line you have there, that's what's going to be shown in a preview. Yes,
and I'm this is clearly my opinion. I'm in the same camp with you, Gloria, and a lot of people, if you're looking at your email on an iPhone, the first thing you see in there is if you are having trouble. That's all. That's the first snippet of text you see. So yes, I've actually been encouraging lots of everybody that I talk to about it. Actually swap that out with something that's more meaningful, that's more in line with your call to action in there.
Yeah.
Use that valuable little piece of space for something other than if you are having trouble. You can always take the view in browser link, slide it like down in the footer somewhere. You have the preview token behind it. You can have that say whatever you want. I have seen a number of organizations do different things with this. I know Gabby Jirasek at Goodman does other stuff with this. But yeah, absolutely. I would encourage people to use that valuable little piece of real estate for something other than that. I think across the board, just about everybody who has opened an email and it doesn't look good on their current email client knows that you can probably look at it in a browser, so I don't think it needs to be in a prominent spot.
I know. It's kind of like,
so,
how many people really do that, you know? Probably a
yeah.
minority of people are clicking that link.
Yeah. How about other organizations on the call? Is anybody else doing different things with the top bar?
Oh, I see some in the chat.
Shanna says we put text before the view in browser, make it the same color. Anybody else? Fernando down at our center says, I don't think I've seen click-through report show who clicks on that does mail2 track that. Actually, no, that wouldn't be tracked in the click-through report, Fernando. Reason being, the click-through report doesn't track any of the administrative clicks. Things like you know, the clicks on the unsubscribe link or manage my preferences link. That would tend to skew click-through data, so we don't actually pull that in and count that as real click-through data. Any other questions at all on that or another topic? Along that same line, something that I'm been advocating, I know I've advocated on previous webinars like this, is the use of the image description or the alternative text that lives behind images. Definitely encourage organizations to put stuff in behind in that alternative text. So we go to the preview here. When people are looking at campaigns with the images blocked, having some sense of what the content of that email is, you can get that across with that alternative text behind each image. So I definitely recommend having that filled in as you're working through your campaigns, kind of along that same line as that, making better use of that top bar. Any other questions from the group today? If not, I just have one final comment. Hopefully everybody got a chance to look at the last Mail2 newsletter article on spring cleaning. That was actually one of our main discussions that we had on a previous webinar. That article got published, I do believe, last week or the week before. I've had some really good response to it. Organizations reaching out to me to assist with things like re-engagement campaigns, list cleanup, that type of thing. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that article and kind of see some of the spring cleaning best practices that we recommend, definitely might want to check that out on our marketing site, Mail2 marketing site, our newsletter site. And if there's anything along that line in terms of list cleanliness, database cleanliness, cleanup, re-engagement, that type of thing, let me know. I've seen some really good re-engagement campaigns done recently across the board. Organizations that are doing re-engagement campaigns, I look at their engagement conversion percentages, and they're doing great. One real good example that I've been using, Mike Moore, Boston Symphony Orchestra. I've been sending out, passing out your version of your re-engagement campaign, which I think was really well done. like I said, if anybody has additional thoughts on doing re-engagement campaigns or dashboard cleanup, that type of stuff, just go ahead and reach out to us and we will assist you with it.
Well, we've got, I got one other question for everybody while we've got y'all here on the phone. And this is something that I just started coming across in the last few weeks with Tessitura, and I'm wondering if anybody has an answer for me on this, because it's been a bit of I've been a bit confused about it, like kind of where it's coming from. Does anybody know about an address, an email address in Tessitura that's sort of like standard as of version 11 that looks like this? I just put it in the chat window. I'm going to, there we go. Is there like a default e-address record in the TE address table? So this is geared more towards the technical folks that might be on the call, that has that value in it, where it's just says temporary, and is it like just a default like record in the TE address table that's not linked up with any customer number or anything like that? I mean, anybody know about that? Because I keep asking people with the network, and they swear that there's nothing like that, but it keeps monkeying with some of our scheduled jobs, because when that comes back from Tessitura, that's not a valid email address, obviously. And it's one of the things that in this update that I'm sending out, like I've had to code in explicit suppression of that particular string, because Tessitura seems to like to give that back to us sometimes, and it really causes some big problems with scheduled campaigns. So I'm curious if anybody knows, like, what is that, like a Tessitura feature, or something that happens with data conversion of some kind? Yeah, it could be. I don't like. See, that's the thing. Like, I don't know if this is like widespread across all licensees, or if this is just only licensees that sort of follow a particular school of thought, or maybe all had the same thread in the Tessitura Network website and thought, like, that's a great idea. So, yeah, it would be in. Like, I would expect to see that string in the address column of TE address. I would also expect that in the customer no column of it, Teresa Dean, talk to me. What is that? Like, does it have a null value for customer number?
Hang on and let me look. Customer number, nope, customer number 0. So that is the quick sell generic, was it the general public account?
Right. Okay. So then, do you know? That's interesting. Okay.
And it looks like it came from the create location is a TDO, which is the Opera. So it looks like it came from their conversion.
Okay.
So actually, it didn't originate with our original database. It looks like it came in from their Tessitura conversion into our Tessitura database.
So it is a 0 in there, and then I wonder. Okay, so that helps tremendously. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so that will be in the version 12 procedures that I send out. And Teresa, you're going to want to run these pretty soon, because if you guys are already on version 12, some of your scheduled jobs would be impacted by this, because if that customer number 0 temporary address is coming back, what happens is really quite ugly, because we process when we process that document of like all the email addresses that come back from Tessitura, like when the scheduled job runs, we say, hey, Tessitura, give us all the email addresses that are associated with people who have tickets to this performance, right? And right now, because that customer number 0 gets picked up as a constituent ID that has tickets to that performance, it also picks up that temporary string for the email address. And because the less than sign and the greater than sign are illegal characters in XML, which is the format, the text format that Tessitura returns data back from the API in, it completely nukes the process. Like, your job might run for 1 or 2 constituents, but then it'll just stop entirely, and it doesn't send to the rest of the 300 on the list. So we need to get those shaved out of your data sets as soon as possible. So
okay, yeah, we're scheduled to go live June 16th.
Okay, cool.
So
well, I'll send you. Yeah, I'll send you along with everybody else this package once it's ready. But just, you know, for everybody's general knowledge, that's one of the key things, like, in this set of procedures that needs to happen. Your scheduled campaign is going to have some big problems if you don't run this before you do your update. So because of that little gem. So thank you, Teresa. That was really helpful.
Most welcome.
All right.
We did get one other question in the chat window, Chris, from, where is it? From Chris and the gang at Kohler Arts. We use Volgistics to manage our volunteers. Is there a way to integrate email and name information from Volgistics into mail2 lists without having to export to CSV file? I guess that would probably depend on if Volgistics has an API, right, Chris?
Yeah, it would depend on if Volgistics has an API. It would also depend on, you know, you may be able to do it some different ways if Volgistics has a Tessitura port. So, like, does Volgistics link up to Tessitura in any way? Like, can it do like a linked database or something like that if it's on a SQL backend? Do you know? Is that the nope there at the end? Is that okay? You don't believe it can? Okay. Yeah. As long as it had a way to be accessible from an external system, and the typical way to do that would be an API. So an application programming interface, kind of like what Tessitura has when you use the Tessitura API. Then we'd be able to access data from it and extract it, you know, possibly email address information. But if it doesn't, then the only way to do it is going to be to grab that CSV and go through the import process with it. It's a great question. If anybody else has questions about, you know, integrating with other systems besides Tessitura, you know, that's definitely something that mail2 can do. If you want to get into that at some point, just shoot us an email. We can jump on a call and talk through the possibility of it. So, I know we got a support ticket the other day for, what was it, John? Some
Form stack from
the form stack. That was it. Yeah,
from
somebody was
Patrick
asking if we could do a form stack integration. So, not out of the question. So, okay. Anything else that you all want to talk about today?
All right, gang.
Great.
Well, appreciate your time, and we'll catch you next month. And lots of good features coming down the pipe as we get here deeper into the second quarter. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.